Hello everyone, my name is Catalina and I'm the head of the Accelerator program at ThinkZone Accelerator. And today I want to talk with you about two topics, the problem-solution fit and the market opportunity. And these are two topics that you as an entrepreneur or as a startup founder should include them in your pitch deck. And today I just want to run through some examples of good and bad examples of how startups deal with these two topics in their pitch decks. So let's start with the first one, which is the problem-solution fit. So what is problem-solution fit? So problem-solution fit occurs when you have evidence that a certain type of customer experiences a certain type of problem. And not only that, but you also have proof that your solution matches that problem and solves that problem for the customer. So usually when, from an investor perspective, an accelerator perspective, when we look at different pitch decks, we ask ourselves those following questions regarding this specific topic. So what is exactly the problem that you're trying to solve? How did you identify and validate this problem? So it's not enough to only identify the problem, but it's also very important to try and quantify it. Who is the main target group? What is the profile of this target group? How did you come up with your solution? And that's also really important because many times what entrepreneurs do, they just come up with a solution and then they try to reverse engineer and try to find a problem for that solution. But it's really important to really start from the problem and kind of work your way towards the solution. And how did you validate your solution? So the validation part is really important and you need to be able to show that in your pitch deck. So when we talk about problem-solution fit, we talk about alignment of three things. So there's a problem experienced by a specific target group, and the solution that you come up with is not only aligned with the problem, but it's also aligned with the profile of the target group. So when the target group matches the problem, we call that problem-customer fit. When the target group matches the solution, we call that solution-customer fit. And when the problem matches the solution, we call that problem-solution fit. And it's really important within your startup and within your pitch deck to show the connection between these three things. So when it comes to the problem target group fit, what are the questions that you should keep in mind? Does the target group experience a problem worth solving? There are many big problems out there, but many times you don't have the resources or the knowledge or the expertise, or there is not really a business opportunity to solve it. Do enough people experience the same problem? It's not enough if a very small niche target group experiences that problem. Investors will want to see how this problem is experienced at scale. And finally, is the problem urgent enough? There are a lot of problems that are really big, but they're not urgent. Therefore, people are not really ready to pay for any solutions for those problems. So it's really important to find something that is big enough, experienced by quite a number of people, but also it's really urgent, so the customers are already actively looking for solutions for that problem. When it comes to the solution customer fit, the questions that you should be considering and the questions that you should be answering within your pitch deck are, is the solution aligned with the profile of your target group? And this is really important. You might have a solution that matches the problem, but it doesn't really match the target group, and the target group is not really ready to pay for that solution. And is the target group able to pay? Sometimes the solution matches the target group and it also matching the problem, but the target group does not have the finances to pay what you're asking them to pay. So it's really important to consider these things. And finally, between the problem and solution fit, is the solution solving the problem? You really need to kind of target the exact same pain points that your customers are mentioning to you. Is it better than existing alternatives? And this is where the market research, the competitor analysis come in to really analyze what is there already in the market. How are customers trying to solve the problem right now? And how is your solution providing a better alternative? And finally, are the customers ready to pay for it? Again, this is important because it's not enough for the solution to be desirable, it needs to be feasible, which means that it has to be financially sustainable. So, I made a collection of different pitch decks that I have seen in the last months, some good examples, some bad examples, and I wanted to show you firsthand the different kind of slides that I have seen in the last weeks, in the last months, when startups apply for our accelerator. What is my thinking when I see these slides, and what are sort of the mistakes that you should consider when making your own pitch deck. So let's look at some common startup mistakes. First mistake or first problem is that the problem and target group are not even mentioned. And this is a really important one. A lot of startups just jump to their solution and talk about how good their solution is, how many benefits there are, but they really forget to mention, okay, but who exactly is your target group and what is the problem that you're trying to solve? So this is one example of a slide that I had seen a couple of weeks ago, and I just want to walk you through my thinking when I see this. So within this slide, there are kind of two topics already. So there's the market opportunity. So here, the startup founder says that there are around 100,000 suppliers in Vietnam for something. And then the market needs. And here, it's an interesting question of the market needs. Like all small business in every sector, the startup will achieve significant benefits with digital technology. And then they already list the different benefits. For example, increasing revenue, increasing customer satisfaction, decreasing operation costs. So kind of all the things that most startups always say. So when I see this slide, my questions are as follows. What is the need here? So when you say that a certain customer will benefit from digital technology, what kind of digital technology are we talking about? Why is this digital technology necessary? For what exactly is this digital technology? So the problem is missing, and the exact target group is missing. Again, here with the benefits of the solution, how do you know this? How do you know that your solution increases revenue? How do you know that your solution increases customer retention, acquisition, so on and so forth? If you say those things, you have to give validation. You have to give proof that, for example, we already did the solution and we increased customer retention by 5% or 10%. So you really need to give data here. And how many target group representatives confirm this? So again, it comes back to data. We as investors want to know the feedback from your customers of using this solution. If we look at the left side of this slide, we talk about market opportunity, and then we have this graph here, but there is not really mentioned the percentage. What is the light blue thing and what is the dark blue thing? So what is really the purpose of this graph? If I as an investor or I as a program manager looking at this, I'm getting more confused. So use graphs wisely. They have to give me more answers than raise more questions. So again, there's not really any problem mentioned. And then we just have 100,000 suppliers, and it's not really clear what exactly are we talking about here. Second problem that many startups face when dealing with problem-solution fit is that the problem is too general and is not connected to a specific target group. And this is something that I've seen a lot in a lot of the pitch decks that I received. So here's an example of one screenshot from one of the pitches that we received. So they say that the problem is that people receive 5,000 marketing messages every single day. And then my question is, where do they see these 5,000 messages? Do they see it on social media? Do they see it while they're in the bus? Do they see it while they enter a mall? Do they see it on TV? So where exactly is this information coming from? And why is it a problem? So here it's not really clear what is the problem of seeing 5,000 messages every single day. And here they try to mention only 3 out of 5 messages are memorized. Where is this data coming from, and why is that a problem? Why is it a problem for businesses that only 3 out of 5 messages are memorized? So you need to translate that in a language that investors can connect to. So for example, maybe 3 out of 5 messages memorized means the fact that businesses just spend a lot of money that don't really give enough results. And here's us coming with our solution that will improve that retention and will improve that conversion of money into productive results. So really in this slide, it's not enough information for us to really assess what is the problem and what is the target group, and why exactly is this a problem. The third challenge that we see a lot in the pitch decks that we receive is that there are too many vague problems for unclear target groups. So the problem is not really defined, and it's not really clear for us to pinpoint of what exactly is the challenge here. So for example, this slide. There is just a list of bullet points that says traditional market is saturated with high maintenance cost. Brands have a high demand to broadcast their messages. No easy way exists to distribute and track ads performance at physical places. There is no platform yet. So when I read these 3 bullet points, I read 3 completely different points that don't give me any answer of what exactly the problem is. This actually might be 3 completely different problems, and it's not really clear what are we talking about here. What's the area? What's the industry? Who experiences this problem? So it's really, really a lot of question marks, and it's too unclear having these bullet points. What are the problems? Who has these problems? Also note that at the end they say that there is no platform yet. Is that really a problem, or is it your assumption that the solution should be a platform? So really be careful of having a solution and then trying to reverse engineer the problem, saying that there is no platform, and here we come in with our platform. Another example here. So I received such a slide of a problem. So customers do not know food quality, dish origin, gifts for partners, marketing, and sales. So these are basically 4 completely different problems, and they're so general that it's not really clear who are these customers. And these problems are just too many and too unrelated. How are you planning to solve all these 4 problems in one single solution? The 4th big mistake or big problem that we encounter is that the problem is reverse engineered, as I mentioned before. In other words, it's an assumption that the problem exists, and it's an assumption that the target group experiences that problem. So if we look at this slide, at this example, reading news, books, documents, listening, and watching videos every day are important to improve English skills. New words makes English learners get bored of reading, listening, and watching, so they give up. And finally, no convenient app exists to look up new words instantly and save them to learn later through effective ways such as flashcards and games. So when I see this slide, I ask myself, again, what exactly is the problem here? Is it that the current apps are not effective for learning English? And if that is so, then what is the problem? And it seems like everything here is based on assumptions. I don't really see any sources. I don't really see any numbers. I don't really see any feedback from learners who have experienced these problems and say that, yes, this is not really effective for me. And again, the problem is reverse engineered because the startup in this case automatically assumes that the solution is an app. So they say no convenient app exists, which kind of leads you to the way that you have to create an app. But what if English is not really learned the best through apps? What if the traditional method of having a teacher and a student, a one-on-one conversation, is still the best way? So there are too many unknowns and assumptions here. And of course, another assumption is that all English learners experience these problems. 5th mistake, it's not really clear how the solution solves the mentioned problem. So the solution is really random. There is a big disconnect between the problem and the solution and the target group. So let's look at this example. We had the problem, the brand pain points: local staff and licensing, e-commerce market know-how, operational efficiency. Managing multiple platforms is not an expertise. And then the solution. So the startup offers market feasibility and discovery, handle local operations, provide management technology. So when I see this, I'm asking myself, who are these brands that experience this problem? Are all brands experience these problems? What is the solution? So within this slide, there's not really clear, is the solution a product? Is it a consultancy? Is it an agency? Is it a platform? So it's not really clear what exactly are you offering. And then again, it's not really clear who would be the user of this solution. So who would need the market feasibility and discovery? So there is not really a logical connection between problem and solution. Okay, so how do you know that your startup achieved problem-solution fit, and how do you show that within your pitch deck? So as we said in our definition, the problem-solution fit happens when you have evidence that customers care about certain goals, certain pains, certain challenges. You need to prove that a certain type of customer experiences a certain type of problem, and that your solution only solves it, not only solves it, but customers are really ready to pay for it. So it's really, I want to emphasize these 2 things. First, a certain type of customer, so it needs to be a niche target group, experiences a certain type of problem, one focus problem, your solution not only solves it, but you can prove that you already have paying customers, which means that they want your solution. Okay, so what you need to keep in mind is that you achieve problem-solution fit when your customers share a similar profile. So if you look at the data of your users or customers, for example, you can see commonalities in their profile. They might be from the same age group maybe, they might be from the same geographic area, they might have the same profession or interest, or they might even read the same media, so they have a common profile, and they confirm similar concerns. So when they give you feedback, or if you conduct surveys, or if you conduct interviews with your customers, more or less they tell you the same things, that they care and they worry about the same problems. Customers pay for the solution, so this is easy, right? If you have paying customers, it means that your solution is valuable to them. Also keep in mind that, especially when you're a startup, they don't necessarily need to pay you money. They might also pay you with their time. So if we talk, for example, social networks such as Facebook or Instagram, you as a user don't really pay for those platforms, but you pay with your time by messaging, scrolling, checking notifications, posting, so on and so forth. And finally, you achieve problem-solution fit when you have a stable growth of new users and customers. So not only you have returning customers, but you manage to acquire every week or every month new customers that are staying with you for a longer time. Okay, so how do you show the problem-solution fit in your pitch deck in a way that will convince the investor that, okay, you have managed to align the target group, the problem, and the solution? So I found this really interesting article from a VC where they were analyzing what are they looking for when they look for startups. So they say that we investors are looking to back teams that are solving a pain point around which a very widespread set of customers are desperate for a solution. So as you can see here, the focus is really on the problem. The solution is just there to kind of match that problem and show that there is a big number of people who actually experience this. So there is an opportunity. Okay, so when you do your problem slide, you should include a very specific and niche target group. You should include a very clear problem statement. Ideally, it's just one clear problem statement. And of course, include facts about the scale of this problem. So how many people experience this problem? If you conducted any interviews or surveys, and you can confirm that we talked with 50 people and 45 of them confirmed that they experienced this pain point, and that really shows validation of that problem, and it shows that there is an opportunity there. Your solution is a simple explanation of what your product is and how it's going to solve the problem laid out in your prior slide. Be mindful of how you present this information. You want it to be a direct response to the problem, perhaps even visually linking the two slides so that your solution is immediately understood. So if you have a problem, want to save money or need to save money, then the solution is save money. So there needs to be a clear connection between problem and solution. So your solution slide should include a clear solution that is connected to the mentioned problem, as I just said, visuals or demo screenshots so we can actually see what is your solution. Is it a platform? Is it an app? Is it a website? Is it a service? And benefits aligned with the target group profile. So let's look at some good examples to show you what I'm talking about. So we received one of these slides, and it was really clear because of the following things. So they say that in their problem slide that 70%, so over 300 of English learners said that speaking is their worst skill, and they don't have an environment to practice English online. This problem slide is really, really clear because, first of all, it shows validation. So they spoke with a few hundreds of students, and 300 of them said that speaking is their worst skill. The problem is really focused, so it's not English learners in general, it's just the speaking part of English. So then the solution slide comes in, our mission and vision. Our mission is to help millions of people become fluent in English speaking, even with an affordable budget, by making an environment where people could practice easier and more efficient with friends and native speakers. So the solution slide here has a clear connection to the problem mentioned in the previous slide. So again, just to summarize, the problem derives from own research. It's clear, specific, it's focused and validated. The solution is aligned with the problem mentioned in the previous slide. Let's look at a second example. So the problem in the first slide is that price is an important concern when people travel. Hotels leave you disconnected from the city and its culture, and there is no easy way to book a room with a local or become a host. Actually, this was the slides of Airbnb. And the solution was a web platform where users can rent out their space to host travelers, to save money, make money, and share culture. So you can see here that save money, make money are automatically connected to the pain point of price. And then the share culture and local connection is directly connected with the problem of no easy way exists to book a room with a local, or hotels leave you disconnected from the city and its culture. Yeah. So each pain point is connected to each solution benefit. And final example, so here we actually have 4 slides. So in the first slide, they tried to introduce you to the problem. And they say that 80% of people do not find the right therapist. And usually therapy happens in one-on-one sessions. The second problem slide, they say that $35 billion are wasted on therapy because most people cannot find the right therapist for themselves. So the solution comes in-person therapy driven by data network, and the benefits are that there's a network of therapists, that is data-driven matching, there's feedback between different sessions, and they prove validation right away that there is 90% success rate of their platform. And again, they include a validation slide for the solution and say that better therapy relationships. So compared to teletherapy, so compared to the problem, their solution keeps the therapist and the patient together for a longer period. They build relationships that last up to 7 months. So what I really like about these slides is the fact that it's highly visual. So as you can see, there are not thousands of bullet points that you have to read through and try to understand what's happening. They try to identify the problem and make it visually appealing, so it's like really easy to capture everything that is said here. So there's also data that quantifies the problem, so 80% of people do not find the right therapist. And they emphasize the advantage of using the solution over the alternative, which is also a really good point. Just keep in mind that your pitch deck does not need to tell the whole story. Your pitch deck just needs to interest the investor. It needs to give you, the investor, an idea about what's happening and make them interested in your company, make them interested in your team. And then once you have a meeting, then you can tell the whole story. So you don't really need to include 1,000 bullet points in your pitch decks. And another example that I want to share with you, and this one I liked mainly because of the design, that again, it's very minimalistic. There is very little information, there's very little text, and it's visually connecting with each other. So we have the problem slide, that there is a business waste of $1.5 trillion. We have the solution slide, which is an AI platform connecting enterprises and their customers over messaging. And then the benefits, they reduce costs by 70%. So first of all, there is a consistent design. So as you can see here, the problem has the text on the left and the visual on the right, and then the benefit or the solution has the same structure. So it's easier to process for our brains this type of information. And then there's a real connection between the problem and the solution. Okay, so main takeaways summarized from everything that I just shared with you. For a good problem-solution fit, write the problem statement from your target group's perspective. Ideally, you would have maybe even a quote from a customer that you talked with. Show the severity of the problem by showing numbers. This number of people experience this problem. This amount of money is being wasted because there are no efficient solutions. So really try to quantify the problem. And formulate your solution as a direct response to your problem. So as I said before, if you say that the problem is waste of money, your solution should be save money. So there needs to be a direct connection between the two. Okay, so that was everything about the problem solution slide and how to make sure that you communicate that in an appealing way in your pitch deck. And the second topic I want to talk with you about today is about the market opportunity. And this is a really important slide because it gives investors an idea about what's the business opportunity here. Is there potential for this startup? So the market slide is important. It helps investors, it helps accelerators or incubators estimate what the future market, what is the potential for a product or service, how could it look like in the future. So question investors ask usually when it comes to the market opportunity is, how did you calculate the market size? I've seen thousands of pitch decks with just like a huge number on the market opportunity slide, and it doesn't really say anything. So it's really important to be ready to answer this question. Where did you take this number from? How much of the market is currently shared by competitors? So let's say that you mentioned that there is a potential of $15 billion market. So how much that is already taken by the competition? What market share do you expect to have in this market? And who are your competitors, and what is their advantage? So let's then take them one by one. And again, as we did it before, I would like to go with you through a list of common mistakes that I've seen startups do when dealing with this specific slide. So first mistake, the market is not properly segmented. So please remember that your market is really closely related to the problem that you're solving. And in the case of many startups, the revenue does not come from solving the problem, but from a different revenue stream. So there's a little bit of a mismatch there. So I'm going to give you an example. I couldn't include the slide for this specific startup, but the story goes like this. The startup was working on a live stream e-commerce platform. So when they did their market opportunity slide, they look at the advertisement and e-commerce market opportunity. But their current revenue comes from importing clothes and selling them live through Facebook. So the market opportunity does not really match at all what exactly they're currently doing, and does not really match their current revenue stream. So when I see this, I realize that, okay, the business model is not validated here. Therefore, the market is not validated. So the whole story kind of crashes. How to do market segmentation the right way? This is an important one. So let's take them step by step. So when you want to do market segmentation, first of all, define as many customer groups as possible. So ask yourself, who are the people that could potentially experience this problem and who could potentially buy my solution? Second step is to describe them in as much detail as possible. So I receive a lot of slides where people say, my target group are students, or my target group are women, or my target group are people between 25 and 45 years old. This is too broad. There are so many target groups within this big population that you mentioned. So you have to describe them as specific as possible. Third, do primary research to validate most promising segments. So you have to go out there, talk to people, and understand which of these different segments has the most potential for your business. And finally, prioritize the top 3 or 5 groups. So when we talk about describe the target group as specific as possible, I'm looking here at a huge list of description points, starting from the gender and age and income to what websites they visit and what TV shows they visit. You might think that, okay, this information is not really relevant. I have an e-commerce website. What do I care about what they watch at home, or what do I care about where they go traveling? This will be important for you in the future when you have to do marketing and you have to do customer acquisition, because you can find affiliate partners. For example, let's say that your customers prefer to spend time on Instagram rather than on Facebook. Then maybe your advertisement should focus on the Instagram platform rather than on Facebook. So it's really smart to know your customer beforehand, because it will help you along the way save a lot of money on marketing and acquisition. The second big mistake that startups do when it comes to the market opportunity is that the market opportunity does not take into account the number of people experiencing the problem. So many startups don't spend too much time in analyzing their market and looking at the current number of people experiencing the problem. And they're not really looking at how much money is currently spent on trying to solve that problem, meaning analyzing how much money is spent on competitors. The third mistake that many startups do is that competitor analysis is not relevant or accurate. And this is part of the market opportunity. 50% of startups, when they do competitor analysis, they use the magic quadrant. And it looks something like this. So usually you just divide your slide in 2. So you have 4 parameters. And then you just kind of spread your competitors around, and then you put yourself in the most convenient spot available. Well, this is an example from one of the startups that applied for our accelerator. So they just put two parameters here. First is the cost, that is cheap and expensive, and then time. Spend a lot of time, don't spend a lot of time, or is convenient. And then they put their competitors, Google, Facebook, agency consultancy, some other company, and themselves in the most effective spot. So when I look at this, I'm kind of asking myself, what agency and what consultancy did you even do in your research when you say agency or consultancy? Can you actually name which are these agencies? And these parameters are kind of really convenient because most startups kind of cheat their way into this because they choose the things that put them in the best light possible. So when seeing such a quadrant, investors ask themselves, can your company only differentiate on two parameters? There's nothing else that puts you aside? And if that's the case, and your product is much different from what already exists, why will people buy it, or why would people use it? Also, if we look back here, if your competitors are Google and Facebook, these are major multinational global companies, what is your advantage? How are you going to compete with Google and Facebook? So really be smart about choosing your competitors. So calculating market opportunity. There are two ways to calculate the market opportunity. So when I talk about market opportunity, I'm talking about the total available market. So the total available market size is the annual revenue your business would make if it had 100% market share of that market. Of course, your total available market, the number that you put, will change as you gain more information over time. So there are two ways to calculate market opportunity. There is a top-down analysis, and there is a bottom-up analysis. So let's take them one by one. First thing I want to mention is that most startups, from everything I've seen, they choose to do a top-down market analysis. So how does the top-down work? Usually you do it by doing some market research. So you just go online, you look up some reports to determine, estimate the size of the market. So let's say if you're an e-commerce platform, what you would usually do is you would go online and search for e-commerce market 2020, and then you'll receive that number, and then you'll put that in your pitch deck. That's, of course, is a very easy way out. As a rule, from what I've researched and from what I know, is that your total available market should be somewhere between $5 million and $100 million. That's, of course, big numbers and kind of changes between different countries, but overall, most investors look within this frame. So how does it work? Estimate the gross margins in this market. One thing to keep in mind is you should also estimate how quickly can you dominate this market. When do you expect to achieve a dominant market share? And what are the odds for you to achieve the dominant market share? So in the previous example, as we've seen, if you're competing with Google or Facebook, how much time would it take you to overcome Google and Facebook and take their market share for your own company? So common mistakes when doing this top-down analysis is that many startups choose numbers that put them in a good light. So they're kind of picky. Okay, this report says this number, this article says this another number. I'm just going to pick the one that sounds the best. So that's a little bit tricky. Second is that they don't really consider the niche target group. So they just kind of pick the number from the market, but they don't do any further breakdown to understand from this market what is the market share for my specific target group, for my specific niche target group. And finally, there is not really a consideration for geographical context. I've seen startups pick some numbers, for example, from Europe or from the US, and then I ask myself, okay, but what's the number of this market specifically here in Southeast Asia? So really consider those things and don't try to rush too much. The bottom-up analysis is actually a preferred type of market opportunity analysis. So how do we actually do that? We start from the profile of your target customer. So if you have a very detailed analysis that we talked about before, that you gathered through interviews or through surveys, then you can make an estimate of how many people with the same description are there in this country or in this region. And then you can come up with a range of how much revenue could be generated from each user. So the bottom-up analysis results into the following number: the number of customers times the revenue per customer per year. So let's take a very silly example. Let's say that you want to sell tomatoes online, that you want to start your e-commerce business and you want to sell tomatoes online. If you would do a top-down analysis, you would first research what is the amount of money spent on fruits and vegetables per year. Then you would try to segment that. So how much of that is spent specifically in cities, and then how much of that is specifically spent on tomatoes, because you're not interested in all fruits and vegetables, but specifically tomatoes. So by boiling it down, you come up to this number, $154 million. If you would do a bottom-up analysis, you would start with the price of a tomato. So the tomato in this case is $1. You estimate through your research, through the interviews, that you would sell 150 tomatoes per household, which would lead you to $150. Then you calculate that, okay, in the city there are 35,000 reachable households that you feel confident that you can reach. That leads you to 5.3 million, and there are 30 cities that you want to target, which leads you to 156 million. So if you can see here, the numbers are kind of the same. They're very similar. So, and this is also the goal. I would really advise you to do both analysis, top-down and bottom-up, and kind of check for yourself. You can get more or less to the same number. Okay, let's quickly go through the competitor analysis. So when you think about your competitors are the solutions your target customers use to solve the problem that they're currently experiencing. So don't really ask yourself who else is in my industry, but rather who else is solving the problem of my customer. So instead of using a magic quadrant, I also really advise you to find out a much more sophisticated and detailed way to analyze different competitors in the market. So I recommend to do such a table where you have your competitor analysis, so you have several competitors, and then you have several criteria that you look at. And here it's very important to not look only at features, but also look at other things. For example, their branding. So maybe they don't have as many customers, but they have a really strong branding. Also look at their partners, suppliers, so on and so forth. So don't check only the features, because your competitors you're not really comparing on features, you're comparing your whole business. So it would look something like this. So you would have, for instance, criteria such as user-friendly. They are really strong on privacy, and they really care about privacy. They have video shuffle, so you kind of mix and match different aspects of the business, and you compare different platforms, and you show that, okay, this platform has this platform doesn't have this. So for competitor analysis, include key benefits, not features that your target customers care about. Don't include only product benefits. Think also, again, of strategy, business model, key partners, suppliers, so on and so forth. Quantify benefits as much as possible. So it's much more effective to say that your product is 30% faster, 2 times as powerful, much faster, more powerful. So try to quantify it. Don't just say it's cheaper, but how much cheaper than the alternatives? Or it's faster. Okay, how much faster? So really try to be as specific as possible. So main takeaways for the market opportunity analysis and competitor analysis. So estimate your market size based on your target customer group and the problem and the size of the problem that they experience. For the competitor landscape, consider the problem that they solve, the branding, the partners, the suppliers, the channels that they use to reach their customers. And conduct both top-down and bottom-up analysis and try to see if you can get to the same number. Okay, so this was it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope this video will be useful to improve your pitch deck. Thank you.